Hello, and welcome to the Live as Lions coaching channel, where we are in pursuit to live wild and free. In today's episode, we're talking about closure, the power of bringing things to an end. Everything we recognize in our surroundings starts a process. It forms a shape, a form. In Germany, we call it a Gestalt. It can be as simple as noticing a bird chirping in the park, or feeling hungry and going to the fridge to grab an apple. But it can also be a complex and challenging process of mourning the loss of a loved one, for example. Here is how a familiar cycle of a process could look like. Going back to the feeling of being hungry and going to the fridge to grab an apple. First, you notice something. You think about it and realize, I'm hungry. You mobilize your energy with the decision to go get some food. You step into action and go to the fridge. You take an apple and bite into it. You feel satisfied and your hunger is taken care of. You check off the task and move on to something else. This whole scenario starts with muscle tension and ends with muscle relaxation. You might intensely focus on only one process, and sometimes it can even feel like you have tunnel vision, or you juggle a dozen of different processes at the same time, and that could have the danger of spreading yourself too thin. This is called also multitasking, which is actually not you doing multiple things at the same time. It is just switching back very quickly from one thing to the other. So you might be really good at juggling multiple things at the same time and switching back and forth. And then you're considered as being very good at multitasking. Anyways, the bottom line is we constantly start, stop, and end processes of different intensity and value. And as human beings, we have the tendency to bring things to an end. We have a desire for wholeness, to find closure. If we do not properly close out a process or a gestalt, it wants to bubble up and come out later in order to get attention, which can get in your way to live wild and free. The importance of closure is to feel good about things. Imagine Monday morning, you create a to-do list for the week, and then life happens. You get a call, your child needs to be picked up from school because it doesn't feel well. You need to pick up your daughter, go home and be the caretaker. And before you know it, the day is over and your to-do list still looks the same as in the morning. And now you're with your thoughts at work, and you take that with you to bed, and you might not sleep very well because you're the whole time thinking about this to-do list that is hanging over your head, and that might be even more on the next day than before, and nothing was checked off from this list. So you started a process by creating this to-do list. You became aware of the work that needs to be done. However, you were not able to go any further in this process, and for sure not able to close it. So you just feel like there is still this attention needed towards work and the to-do list that you just can't fulfill right now, and it just takes away your energy. So it would feel a lot better to just go to bed in the evening looking at this list, and every single thing on the list is just checked off, and you just feel great. I'm like, yes, I nailed it. And everything is done, and tomorrow is a new day, and I can start a new to-do list. So bringing these things, these little things or big things to enclosure, it makes you feel better. Another importance of closure is to live healthy relationships. Let's say you went to church and you got really burned or hurt by somebody in the church, maybe even the pastor, and you left church on a bitter note. So every time somebody brings up the topic of church, you can't even help yourself but get defensive, and you throw arguments in the room that might hurt other people. And you make best friends with Caroline, and Caroline is still going to church. She loves church. She's thriving in church. But every time she brings up that subject, you jump on her throat, and she doesn't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on. It's not actually her, and what she's actually experiencing and what she's doing is totally fine, and it even sounds fun. However, it triggers something in you that you haven't dealt with because you left church on a bitter note. So every time she brings it up, that is being triggered and you find an outlet with Caroline. So in order to live a healthy relationship here with Caroline, you need to go back and close this chapter that is still open about your church experience or that individual person in the church. And it doesn't need to be church if you're not religious. It can be maybe you were bullied in your soccer team, but it can hinder to have healthy relationships down the road if things are not being dealt with, if things were not brought to a proper closure. Another example where closure helps you to have healthy relationships is this little story. Picture Liz and I, we're having a fight. It's probably something trivial again, like how to separate the trash. I come from Germany, a culture where we have 6 or more trash cans. We have paper, we have organic, we have batteries, we have glass, and then everything else. And then if you have any chemicals that do not go into the everything else trash, then you need to separate that again. So Liz comes from a culture where you do not have that many, which I personally like. Anyways, this can come to a fight where I'm like, this is not how it works. And now I need to go through the trash and separate it, and it's yucky. And here we go again. So before I know it, I steam out of the room because I'm mad, I'm upset, and I'm losing Armageddon. So I will spend the whole day thinking about this conflict, thinking about what I said that I wish I wouldn't have said, thinking about a stupid fight that was so unnecessary, and I'm just left feeling horrible and sad, and I'm occupied with this fight. And it is an open process that I am now spending the whole day thinking about and trying to figure out how can I bring this to an end. Then we have this rule in our family: we don't go to bed without confronting the conflict. Yeah, the elephant in the room. So once that is done, there can be communication, there can be forgiveness, there can be closure. And it feels like, wow, finally this burden is lifted off my shoulders. I feel great again. I feel happy. Life is good. But only the closure of this was able to give that feeling to me. The alternative could have been to not confront it, just go to bed, sleep over it, and act the next day as nothing ever happened. However, that does not release the energy that was put in the beginning to have this argument in the beginning to start with. So you will feel a little bit like there is still this elephant in the room, but let's not address it, because as long that is not being addressed, maybe nobody notices it or forgot about it. Finding proper closure to a process also energizes you in body and soul. See, every process requires energy. After the cycle of the process is closed, this energy is being released again and available for new things. If this process does not go full circle, the invested energy is still locked in and not available for further processes. Therefore, when a new process starts, less energy is available to work with. And if you have too many open processes, this will leave you depleted, empty, and exhausted. A healthy closure of a process also helps you to develop. An open process with high emotional value may hinder development and integration of higher and other life cycles. It is like being stuck on a level and you cannot upgrade anymore. So the goal of the whole thing is to live wild and free right here and now, life to the fullest. And you might wonder now, how do I find closure? The best way to bring something to a healthy ending is to have a primary closure. This means being in contact with yourself and the situation or person. So let's go back to the trash fight. The best way, the primary closure, is me going back saying, hey, listen, that was not appropriate how I reacted to this trash situation. I said some things that I shouldn't have said. I'm sorry about that. Can you forgive me? And can we just try again and talk about maybe a better strategy to separate our trash in the future. Doing this allows me to find a healthy ending. I'm in direct contact with myself and the other person. Process closed. Upgrade to the next level. Another way to close a process would be a secondary closure, which might work with processes of low emotional meaning, like feeling hungry, but it does have stifling consequences with processes of high emotional value. A secondary closure is not really closed. It is being avoided or replacement is created, where the person is not in direct contact with him or herself and the situation. The replacement is used instead of a direct encounter with the situation. It is an artificial closure, and it can come in shapes of fantasies to escape to a dream world without the conflict or challenge or requirements. Imagining scenarios as you want them to be, however, reality looks different and requires an alternative strategy that involves a primary direct closure. Another secondary closure could be compensation, alcohol, drinking, eating, agitation. Man, I love my job. I love what I'm doing. I love being employed. However, I'm so frustrated with my boss. Every day the same. Every day I have to compensate what he is not able to fix. And I'm so over it. I technically should confront and find the conversation with my boss, but I'm just not comfortable with this. Instead, I just come home every day. I feel completely depleted and exhausted. I don't feel like I'm seen. And instead of really dealing with my boss, well, I just drink beer. I just eat all that junk food. I just agitate myself with whatever helps me to deal with the situation that I feel right now, because I feel trapped. I feel miserable. I think I'm trapped. I think I'm miserable. And it is easier to just compensate with these unhealthy things instead of dealing with the situation at hand. Distraction. Distraction is also a way of secondary closure. You know, man, I flunked so many times in my exams. I technically should go back and finish my degree. However, you know what? I just gonna play some more video games. I'm really into video games right now. I'm kind of happy with my day job, doing the job that I have right now. I can pay my bills. I know my perspective is not the most colorful right now, and I'm not necessarily great, but I'm okay. So instead of continuing on the path that I set out for, you know, I just gonna do this for now, and let's just continue with some distraction, watching Netflix, playing some video games, but not really dealing with the issue at hand. What am I gonna do? Am I gonna finish my studies, or do I just decide, you know what? No, I choose a completely different path. But what do? Do I deal with what I started? Or do I just keep it floating in the air and not making a decision about it, you know? And instead of dealing with it, let's just play another round. Another way of secondary closure would be a collective closure. A whole group compensates for something. Let's say you're an artist and you're really good at what you're doing. You have something to say. You're well trained. You have good skills. However, you just can't seem to make any money. So instead of really diving into why do I not make money and how can I get a hold of my financial situation so I can experience financial freedom, it is easier to just go to your favorite pub where all your artist buddies hang out who all have the same issue, and it's easier to just complain about finances and money and that money is bad and it's corrupting everyone, instead of just diving in and be like, you know what, I need to deal with the situation to make money because I started my career as an artist, but somehow the part that makes the whole thing go round and round, the money part, is not working. So I need to go there and actually deal with what's hindering me, instead of just going to the pub every day, finding satisfaction and kind of peace by seeing everybody else having the same issue and complaining about it and making it a bad thing anyways. Replacement emotions can also be a way of secondary closure. It's easier to be angry instead of sad. When you have a great time and at the end of the week, suddenly your father-in-law just rages havoc. And you're like, what is suddenly going on? We had such a great time. Why is he suddenly back in screaming at everybody, being angry, blaming people for being stupid, not doing things right? And you're just like, what? Why is he suddenly like on the last day? Why is this suddenly happening? And it's easier to be mad at something or to be angry at something than actually being sad and being able to say, I'm sad our time is over. I wish it would not be over because I love you guys and I'm gonna miss you all. It's easier to just be angry, and that is, instead of dealing with and bringing it to a healthy closure, you cap it with something you're more comfortable with, which is being angry. And last but not least, a secondary closure can be due to your culture. Boys don't cry. Hey, instead of mourning and being sad that your grandparents died, just act like everything is fine. Just act like nothing happened. Just act like you're totally okay, because culturally you were brought up that, hey, boys don't cry, man up. So instead of really finding closure that your loved ones are no longer with you, you just find a secondary closure that is even culturally correct by being okay, by just being strong, by not allowing yourself to be sad, to cry. And all these motivations behind a secondary closure are very normal because there are essential desires behind them. I want to be successful. I don't want to fail. If I try this again, if I get back on the horse, I might fail again. If I actually go down this road, I might not be successful, but I want to be successful. I want to be loved. I don't want to die. I want to live. I don't want to be meaningless. I want to be meaningful. All these essential desires are behind the alternative of closing something with a direct contact, a primary. So when you are now aware of a secondary closure in your life, an open process, what can you do? And I would like to introduce to you 3 options. And maybe you have heard it before. Love it, change it, leave it. You're thinking, feeling, and behaving towards something right here and now. How does it look like? And then think about it, feel it out, and observe how you behave towards it and see, can I actually start loving it? Can I actually start loving that our trash is not separated? Can I relax about it? Can I actually bring myself to the point where I'm like, actually, this is better, or I'm on board with this, and everything is going to be okay? But it needs to be honest, because if you just say, actually, you know what, I can handle it, it's not that bad, and you don't really mean it, you're at the secondary closure. You're just putting the lid on something that will bubble up later. So it needs to be a honest, I actually can change my heart about this subject or this issue or this scenario. The second option would be change it. Can I change something? By me being able to change something about this process, this situation, this person, can I actually find closure? Can I come and have a conversation about it? Can we maybe improve the trash separation? Can we maybe try something else? What would work for you? What could we change in order to have a flawless garbage separation, right? So if I can't get to the point that I can say, I actually love it the way it is, can I approach it with a perspective of change? And if that is not the case, I need to ask myself, do I need to leave it? And how does that look like? It doesn't necessarily mean I walk out the door and I'm never going to touch the trash again. But what is a healthy border to say, sorry, I cannot engage with this anymore. And it might be that I say, you know what, when this happens, I cannot be the one who goes back into the trash and separates it. I would need to ask you to do that because I I'm at the end of my knowledge, what else we can do. So this is not my realm anymore, or my responsibility, and I need you to take care of this, And in our last episode, we talked about how we moved internationally. We talked about leaving Germany, moving to the US, and there were many open processes that we had to deal with. And we went through our life and we were like, what do we need to take care of before we are leaving? What needs to be closed? So there were contracts, relationships, accounts, cars, rent, and even our rabbit Harold, So with relationships, we made sure we say proper goodbye and we have quality time with our loved ones in order to find a good closure before we are leaving for the US. Bank accounts, we let everybody know, hey guys, we need to do this, juggle that. There will be more transactions internationally, all these kind of things. Our car, that was something where we actually decided we will change this. First, we thought, let's bring our car, put it in a container, ship it over to the US. But we changed that from bringing it to actually selling it, which was in the end a very good decision. With our rabbit, Harold. Harold was not allowed on the airplane because of COVID and everything. No critters were allowed on the airplane. So that was a process, an open gestalt that we had to deal with. And trust me, I was more the kind of person who was trying to not deal with it. Kind of like, oh, it will be okay. Don't worry about it. Let's talk about this when we actually come to that. There are more important things right now. But actually, I just didn't want to deal with it because I loved and love our rabbit. But I didn't want to really engage in the subject of finding a way for Harold to not being able to come along, which means we need to leave him behind, So in the end, we were able to give him to one of my family members who loves rabbit and has rabbit paradise at home, like a huge play field with other rabbits, with a whole city with little houses that she built, and every rabbit has a house and can jump around. Honestly, it's like heaven for rabbits. It's 10 times better than what Harold had with us. And we decided, okay, this is the solution. It was a long struggle and battle, and it was emotionally uncomfortable. But in the end, we found a solution that allowed us to close this chapter with the solution. We love it. We love now the idea of leaving Harold in Germany. Contracts, some of the contracts were still unresolved, and we had to go back and be like, we need to change this. We had to ask ourselves the hard question, if there are any open conflicts. It is easier to put conflicts on the back burner or to run away from them and ghost people instead of actively searching for a way to reconcile. And there aren't always opportunities to reconcile. Maybe the other person absolutely does not want to reconcile, or died and is no longer around to make up. In this case, you need to leave it. And a healthy way would be a ceremony that represents an acceptable closure to you, like writing a letter and burning it, or sending it down the river, to get rid of your anger and find a way to move on. If you're up for it, I would like to invite you to a little exercise. Ask yourself, how do you feel right now in your role, in your career? And then walk through your home or through the place where you're at right now and look for an object that attracts you the most, as if it is whispering to you. It might be a plant in your room or something that is hanging on the wall, whatever speaks to you the most. Pick it up and ask the object if there's anything it wants to tell you. After a while, ask yourself if there is anything, or is there any secondary closure which is in the way of what this object just told you. And then ask yourself, can you love it? Can you change it? Or can you leave it? This might sound a bit strange, but interesting things happen when you try this out. You might walk through your home and the object that speaks to you the most is the Indiana Jones DVD on the shelf. You are attracted to this character and his hat and whip, and you ask the Indiana Jones DVD if there's anything it wants to tell you about your current role and career. And suddenly, you feel like the object says, "You are made for adventure. Why the heck are you stuck in this boring desk job? Why are you not doing the things you want to do? You haven't grown in years, and what happened to your passion for traveling and international relationships?" Sure, you might ask yourself, why am I talking to my DVD? But hey, if the DVD wants to tell you something, wouldn't it be rude not to talk to the DVD? And the idea is not to talk to the DVD, but more to yourself and to tap into your subconsciousness. Okay, this is it for today. May this equip you in your pursuit to live as lions, wild and free. Until next time, bye-bye.